Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the June 16th SANDAG Public Safety Committee meeting. Before we start, I would like to ask our interpreter to be introduced and walk us through on how to access interpretation services for today's meeting, please.
Thank you, Chair. We'll begin with the announcement in English, in Spanish, and then we will be back with the announcement in English. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación globo terráqueo y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, desde una tableta o celular, presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego idioma. Además, para acceder a los servicios de interpretación de manera presencial, pide auriculares en la recepción. To use the Zoom interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are, click on the interpretation icon, World, and select either English or Spanish. If you are joining using the Zoom mobile app from a cell phone, tablet, please press the ellipsis, 3 dots, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Additionally, to access English, Spanish simultaneous interpretation in the room in person, check out a headset from the receptionist. Gracias, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Why don't we start with a Pledge of Allegiance? Please join me. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we jump into the meeting, can we confirm that we have quorum?
Yes, Chair, we have quorum.
Do we need to take roll? Yeah, why don't we take roll?
Okay, for South County, Chair Rodriguez,
Present?
Councilmember Donovan,
Here.
East County is here. North County Coastal, Mayor Blackburn.
Here.
North County Inland, Councilmember Frank. Here. City of San Diego. Absent. County of San Diego. No, county, yeah, absent. Regional Fire Emergency Services, Chief McKee. Yes. San Diego County District Attorney, Deputy Chief Investigator Duran.
Here.
San Diego Sheriff's Department Sheriff Martinez. County Sheriff's Chief and Sheriff's Association Seat A.
Here.
Chief, okay. County Chief Association Seat B. Absent. San Diego Police Department. Absent. For advisory members, State Police, State Public Safety Assistant Chief Root.
Here.
Federal Public Safety is absent. Regional Transit, Tim Curran. Homeland Security is absent. Federal Public Safety, Jaime Rios. County Public Safety Assistant Chief Heffines. Southern California Tribal Chairman's Association is absent. And Department of Defense, absent. That concludes quorum.
Thank you. And do want to note that Mayor Minto, Vice Chair Minto is here. Thank you. I want to remind everybody of our process on member and public comments. Members can raise their hands to speak at appropriate points in our agenda. For members of the public, individuals present at SANDAG must complete a speaker slip and present it to the clerk, which will be taken first, followed by anybody online. If you're a member of the public and would like to speak on any item virtually, please use the right-hand icon in the Zoom toolbar once we reach that item on the agenda. If you are calling into the meeting, please press *9 on your phone. If you would like to comment on any item, all comments, whether emailed or live, will be part of today's meeting record. So why don't we get started? Item number 1 on our agenda is public and member comments regarding issues not on today's agenda. Do we have any comments from members of the public?
Yes, we have two. We have Blair Beekman. Go ahead.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks for your monthly public meeting today. Or is it 5 monthly? I'm not sure yet. But it's been about a year I've lived here. I've attended this meeting a few times. Thanks a lot for your patience in my public comment time. My points may be abstract sometimes, but I really do try to stick to what is the subject matter and try to offer a way to understand your issues, possibly in a bit more abstract terms than you're used to, but they have a really important purpose. Try to connect to what the agenda items are about. As general public comment today, I wanted to comment first on, as this being a public safety meeting, and being from San Jose area, there's been serious issues of fentanyl distribution by a SJPOA executive manager that I think it's been having some important ramifications across the state, country. State and federal agencies have been coming down hard on border areas and local distributors throughout the state. I don't know if this is a quite approach. If it is a quite, I didn't say that very well, but I don't know if it is a good approach to this subject. As there, I think there's violent crime issues that we're already having to deal with that I think may exacerbate those violent crime issues a bit. And I think it may be a better tack to do a slow simmer on local distribution busts at this time and concentrate possibly more on internal issues of police and medical health industry and that kind of work and effort to do a good review process of fentanyl distribution from those places, I think can yield a lot of good results, and it can be done in peaceful terms. It's a little difficult and uncomfortable, but I think it's for the best for all of us in the end. But good luck how we can work on those things in the following months. And I wanted to comment that in San Jose, not San Jose, in San Diego, city of San Diego, they have serious issues of working on future of tech and ALPRs for their budget and things, and for the future of the FLOC program and such. It's my goal that as much as the FLOC program is doing well, we don't have to rely on an overabundance of new ALPRs and surveillance technology, that we can really work that minimal use practices can cover the same amount of territory as a plethora of tech. And those are important concepts to consider in an overall open and accountable practices. We're working towards our future in San Diego that we're not fully getting very well, but we're trying. And thank you in the efforts of trying. Good luck in continuing to try and learn how to try. And it just brings better thoughts and better ideas and understandings of how to address our issues overall with openness and accountability with tech. Thanks.
Our next speaker is dear.
Yeah, so, I find it interesting what's that noise? I find it interesting who's missing from this meeting, but there is a huge health or public safety risk to not only our county and every city, but this entire nation and the world, because there is a UN agenda that's taking place, and it's a globalist agenda, and all of you guys are engaging in this. And you have all taken an oath to uphold the God-given rights that we all have and make sure that those are protected against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And you're allowing globalist agendas and leaders to dictate what happens on a local level instead of listening to the communities and letting them dictate it. You're spending our own money to bring in a UN agenda that is set out to enslave everybody and take the sovereignty of every nation. They're set out to put a global pandemic treaty, preparedness or accord or whatever it is. And that's going to take all the sovereignty of every nation deciding what happens during another local health emergency. So you guys, in your pursuit to align with the UN's agenda, are actually going against your own oath. You're engaging in treason, and it's a threat to our livelihoods. And nobody's addressing that because you guys are all engaging in it. And so it's like, who do you go to when the people that are supposed to protect you from things like this happening that are engaging in it? There's nowhere to go. And it's like, you guys better do something, because you think that getting in bed with these people is going to make you outside of the system that they're creating to enslave everybody in. You're not. You won't have any deciding power once they take all the sovereignty of every nation's deciding power. So as you sit here and you play along with this and you push us into this new way of life that is completely destructive to the oath that you took, you guys need to think about what you're doing, because you're not going to like it once it's in complete fruition, because you're not going to be outside of that. But you're just puppets right now being used to push this. And I don't understand why nobody will acknowledge that, but you act like it's a good thing to be in bed with globalists who don't care about you guys. They're just pulling your strings and using you. And it's time for somebody to have the balls to stand up and do something for this nation and our county, so that we don't have all of our rights taken and sovereignty, and you guys have nothing to do at that point, but just live in the 15-minute cities that they've provided for us. It's up to you guys. You took an oath to do this and you're failing miserably.
Your time has expired.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from committee members? All right, if no further comments, moving on to item number 2. And that is the agency report. Dr. Cindy Burke, SANDAG's Senior Director of Data Service, will provide an update on key programs, projects, and initiatives.
Good afternoon. We have a lot of good news to share with you today. We learned last week that the San Diego region is slated to receive more than $260 million from the California Transportation Commission from SB1 programs. $140 million is recommended for SANDAG and Caltrans for the Otay Mesa Eastport of Entry project. $18.5 million is recommended for SANDAG, Caltrans, and the Port of San Diego for Harbor Drive 2.0 port access improvements. And this project will include construction of dedicated truck lanes, queue jumps, intelligent transportation system technologies, and electric charging infrastructure at the Port of San Diego's 10th Avenue and National City Marine Terminals, National City. And $103 million is recommended for SANDAG and NCTD to double track and replace the 80-year-old wooden bridge across okay. Peter just said it, the lagoon. The new modern concrete rail bridge and 0.6 miles of double track is critical rail infrastructure that will add capacity to support future service increases and ensure the low sand corridor is resilient for years to come. We also recently received $1.1 million award for low sand through the Federal Rail Crossing Elimination Program. And for this level of funding to come to the region is a really big deal. It wouldn't have happened without the partnership we have with our board and committee members. So congratulations to all of us, and thank you to all the staff who worked so hard to make this happen. Earlier this week, we also opened 4 more miles of HOV lanes on I-5 as part of our North Coast Corridor program with Caltrans for a total of 13 miles between Oceanside and Carlsbad. Also, the draft amendment to the 2021 regional plan was released this week, and we will be coming to the next board meeting on June 23rd to hold a public hearing on that proposed amendment. Next Wednesday, Partners for Automated Vehicle Education, or PAVE, will hold a virtual discussion about the role of law enforcement in the era of automated vehicles. This is relevant to SANDAG because of the regional plans explores technological trends such as AVs and also prioritizes safety and sustainable mobility choices. It's critical that law enforcement officers who are responsible for enforcing the rules of the road are prepared for the paradigm shift automated vehicles will bring. Representatives from the California Highway Patrol and the Arizona Department of Transportation will be at this event to share their firsthand experience. Everyone is invited to join, and you can visit pavecampaign.org to register. And lastly, I also want to invite you all to join us for a beach cleanup that we're hosting tomorrow in Imperial Beach with the Surfrider Foundation at 10 a.m. Hope to see you there, and thank you, Chair. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Burke. Are there any comments from the members of the public?
Yes, we have one, the original. Go ahead.
Yes, so I'm wondering if in your whole rollout of automated vehicles, Transdev is having anything to do with that. They're the company that, or entity that MTS contracts out for their employees, but they're a France-based company who are in the lead role in like bringing forward this kind of technology. So no wonder why they want to stay in bed with them. But as we talk about public safety, and you guys bring in EV charging stations and all this Wi-Fi everywhere with all of this public transit, nobody tends to talk about the threats to public safety that those offer, which is these EV charging stations, lithium batteries, and any kind of lithium battery that you're using for any of these buses or kind of transit, and all the EV vehicles that you want people to be driving in. Lithium batteries are toxic to the environment. Mining for lithium is toxic to the environment and people, and yet people are being sitting right in these lithium fields and mining it. No wonder why no one cares about that. It's just because it's the new way of life, and as long as we get it in any way we can. But they also create fires that you can't put out. And these lithium batteries are toxic, so they can't be recycled. So are you just going to have some kind of field that has a bunch of these batteries in it that just sits there and destroys the earth? I mean, everything you guys do is productive to what you say that you're wanting to do. 5G radiation is horrible to be going through and emitting through our bodies, yet it's being put out everywhere. And that can lead to the same symptoms as having the flu. So, you know, the more of this that you guys put out, the more people are going to have flu-like symptoms. They're going to be told that they have COVID and all this BS. So, and what happens when there's a fire from these lithium batteries on a bus and no one can get out, and you can't even put the fire out because there's not enough water? I thought we're in a drought, yet it takes hundreds of thousands of gallons or tens of thousands of gallons just to put out one lithium battery on a Tesla. You almost just need to start digging for sand and all that. But nobody in your pursuit to roll out this new way of living, you're not addressing the safety and threats to people that are being brought by these products. Yet you just have this push to do it because it's this whole new way of life. Yet you ignore all of those things. And so in your pursuit to have public safety, you're negating it. It's just like equity. The more you try and get equity, the more you perpetuate inequity. So you guys need to start addressing these things if you want to pretend that you're going to do anything for public safety, because this is a serious issue and no one seems to want to address it because otherwise it'll go against your whole agenda.
And that concludes public comments.
Thank you. Are there any committee member comments? Questions? I do want to note, thank you so much for looking ahead and looking at how policing will have to be modified with smart technology in our vehicles. I very much look forward to those presentations and see what we could do to make sure that we're still effective as agencies. Thank you. So this is only a discussion item. Moving on to consent, item number 3, approval of the meeting minutes. Clerk, are there any public comments on this item?
No public comment.
Any committee member comments?
Approval of minutes.
And a motion by Mr. Campillo, seconded by Mayor. Anything to discuss? All right, why don't we go ahead and vote?
That item passes with those members present.
Thank you, Clerk. Moving on to item number 4, this will be presented by Chief Kay.
Good afternoon, Chair Rodriguez, Vice Chair Minto, Council, and all members. I'm Chuck Kay, the Chief of Police for the City of Coronado and the Chair of the Chief Sheriff's Management Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update from the Chief and Sheriff's Management Committee. On June 7th, the Chief Sheriff's Committee met, and here are the latest developments from the meeting. Tony Ray, the Director of Argus, provided an update on the latest developments on ongoing projects at Argus. The Argus JPA was sent to all city managers for signature. Grants have been awarded for 3 critical areas: cloud migration, single sign-on, and regional training programs. The Chiefs and Sheriffs Management Committee has approved the Argus calendar year 2023 work plan, and the top 5 projects have been prioritized according to their level of importance and urgency. The Management Committee suggested that Argus reinstate the Technical User Working Group, which will be headed by police officers, investigators, and all Argus application users to create a new and improved applications or create new and improved applications that advance public safety. The group's first meeting is set for June 20th. This concludes my update, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chief. Can we ask if there's questions from the members of the public?
Yes, we have the original.
Yeah, I would like to know, man, it's like, so Tony Ray was sitting in the Board of Supervisors board meeting room when I was brutally assaulted by one of your guys' deputies. And this deputy in an internal affairs investigation was exonerated, even though I sustained multiple injuries. And so to have him or any of you guys be working on anything that has to do with public safety, when you guys are yourselves a threat to the people, when that happens, and all I was doing was speaking at a meeting, he didn't have to drag me out by my arms and legs, throw me around, jump on my back while he put his knee in my back, slam my head into the ground while I'm screaming and pleading for them to stop.
Thank you.
Oh, no, I'm not done.
We would ask
I'm not
that
done. I got it.
please actually.
You don't need to silence me.
Yeah, I mean, we're just asking public commenters to stick to the item at hand. If there's any particular issues that you would like addressed, we could have conversations after the meeting.
The next speaker is Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. If it's any consolation, the previous public speaker offered a really good public comment on the previous items. Thank you for her words. I think they're really needed in how to address your future of smart technology for vehicles, and it was good dialogue. I would like to add to it at some point, and I'm very much noting what you're saying. For myself and this item, I guess my big concern with the upcoming Argus study session process you're developing, thank you very much for that. I hope that you can be considering concepts that the new flock system for San Diego area will be fairly important. And within that, like what my public comment offered, I hope you'll be wanting to offer ideas and practices of minimal use with the technology of ALPR technology involved. It shouldn't be the goal to want to continually expand the technology, although those options are available and of interest, to really practice and want to practice to limit the technology and make it a very specific focus only on, say, license plate readers themselves, and not the facial recognition tech that can go with the license plate reader stuff. Those are important concepts to differentiate, and that I hope can be really open conversations in the future of this Argus process for dialogue and understanding, and good luck in those sort of efforts and conversations. Thank you.
And that concludes public comment.
Thank you. And Mayor Minto?
Yeah, what I have said might not actually be answerable today. For Argus or whatever, but you talk about putting that team together to go over new ideas and things. And I don't know if you have it today, but on the like an arrest form, or maybe even could be even the Argus 2 form, the crime report, homelessness, and where we check the boxes, things for the anchors, like for divorce, COVID, loss of job, the economy, so that we could find a really good way of measuring what some of those causes are. I don't know if it's being done yet or not, or if it's done, just anecdotally, but those might be some good anchors to put on one of those forms somewhere. So that's it.
Thank you, Vice Chair Minto. Any other committee member comments? All right, this is only an informational item. Moving on to item number 5, which will be presented by Chief McQueen.
Good afternoon, Chair Rodriguez, Vice Chair Menudo, and committee members. My name is Dave McQueen. I'm the Fire Chief of the Rancho Santa Fe Fire Protection District, also the Vice President for the San Diego County Fire Chiefs Association. So a brief report, San Diego operational area deployed resources throughout the state of California under the request of CalES due to the rain and snow accumulation this past spring. San Diego City Fire and Rescue deployed swiftwater teams to Sacramento due to the flooding. An urban search rescue task force represented by CAL FIRE, San Marcos Fire, and Carlsbad Fire were deployed to the Mammoth Mountain Ski Resort and community due to the snow accumulation up there. CAL FIRE San Diego unit resources were deployed to Big Bear and Lake Arrowhead community due to the snow accumulation. On May 1 through 3, 2023, the training section cadre, supported by the San Diego County Fire Chiefs Association, conducted the 20th annual County Wildland Drill in Verona. This is a multi-agency drill with fire, law enforcement, and other cooperators. The emphasis of the training is on incident action plans, command and control, communications, handling an incident within an incident operations, tactics, aircraft, evacuation planning, and execution of that plan. County Wildland Drill was actually created because of the 2003 Cedar Fire, and this is the 20th anniversary. On May 4th, the Zone Haven platform for evacuations and the new high-low evacuation signal was presented to the San Diego County Fire Chiefs Association. Zone Haven is a new enhanced tool for situational awareness to plan and execute large evacuations by law enforcement, fire, and county EOC in a more efficient, timely manner. There's a laid out project path forward for this, and the anticipated go live is going to be May of 2024. On June 1st, San Diego County Fire Chiefs Association completed the new installation of executive officers and the respective sections. On June 2nd was the Wildland Operations Forum. This is a report out from the San Diego Operations Coordinator, CAL FIRE, U.S. Forestry, National Weather Service, Protective Services, CalES, and what air and ground resources are available within San Diego as we move closer to fire season. We actually do have a training class up in Camp Pendleton, but it was canceled due to the weather conditions that did not support firing operations, but this would have been a multi-agency drill. That is the end of the report, unless there's any questions for San Diego County Fire Chiefs.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any comments from the members of the public?
We have original. Go ahead.
Love your laugh. That's so funny. I had every right to speak on that last item. For you to silence me is totally bogus, but it just shows exactly what you guys are up to. And the fire chiefs, I'd like to know if, just like these EV charging stations or these lithium batteries and or the chemtrails that spray above us, there's actually a geoengineering experiment going on above in the clouds. It's called EPCAPE, the Eastern Pacific Cloud Aerosol Precipitation Experiment, and they drop a lot of things upon the land that are flammable. And so that's a big reason why fires can go up, as well as things that are dry. But are you looking into things like that as you plan ahead to fight fires? How are you going to fight all these lithium battery fires if we have a lack of water, supposedly? And what are you going to do to mitigate the fact that these chemtrails and geoengineering that happens above us is affecting your ability and your need to fight fire? Nobody wants to look into that because you guys think, I'm full of shit. but it's true. And you should be looking into that as we talk about public safety, because these things actually perpetuate fires and cause them to go, you know, into ways that you can't fight them in a good amount of time. So please look into that, because it's something that affects your job, but it also affects all of those around us. And it is a public safety issue that should be addressed.
Thank you. We have Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Hi, sorry, Blair Beekman again. I don't know what happened, but I unmuted for a sec. Excuse me, I'm coughing. The previous public speaker brought that in nicely. She started out perhaps a bit abstractly, but she brought it into the initial subject matter of fire issues, and now to address fire issues. I thought was nice, and I go through the same sort of thing, but hopefully you can have patience for. Thank you for that patience. Overall, interestingly, I think it can bring up some good points to consider, and try to work the public process in good terms. For my own self, I attended a Bay Wasi quarterly meeting about a week or so ago in the Bay Area. Their local Yawasis have a public meeting process each quarter, and it's really interesting, and it's fairly interesting. And for this June meeting, there was not too much dialogue or agenda items on community natural disaster preparedness issues that I think has been kind of a major concern and issue and worry for local California governments in the past few years. And I had the feeling it was quite possible we were headed to some sort of natural disaster by this fall or maybe in 2024. And without much of a report at this past Bayuasi meeting, it was a sense to myself that things may be kind of going okay, and that we may not have significant worries coming up soon. I don't know. I can never say these things as certain, but hopefully to speak about those concepts here openly can hopefully give yourself some direction and understanding. And overall, I hope good luck in our efforts in how to always want to make these sort of conversations about future possible natural disasters open and accountable, because it helps the ideas of public safety a lot for a community and good preparedness practices. And it's always important to do these things openly. And so thanks for your efforts in listening to my understandings at this time. Thank you.
Public comment.
Thank you. Are there any committee member comments, questions? All right, this is an informational item only. Moving on to item number 6, Senior Director Dr. Burke will present on changes to clarify Public Safety Committee membership as described in our Board Policy 002.
Do we have the clicker? Okay, I'll just start. Okay. Thank you, everybody. So Board Policy 002 at SANDAG outlines the membership for the SANDAG policy committees, including the Public Safety Committee. And proposed changes to the board policies are brought to the Board of Directors on an annual basis. And prior to making those recommendations, we wanted to come to you all for discussion. This is not an action item, but to discuss with you some of the changes that we would like to include to the Board of Directors. So just, we did a public safety 101 at the beginning of the year, but just to remind you all, there are 12 voting members of the Public Safety Committee, including 6 board members or their alternates from around the region, as well as 6 public safety members, 2 representatives from the chief sheriffs, a representative from San Diego Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, the District Attorney's Office, and Fire EMS. And we also have 8 advisory members. And as is outlined in the report, for 7 of those seats, there's either some ambiguity that we'd like to clarify or actually an omission in board policy too. So first, we have 2 federal public agencies, and currently in board policy too, it says that those appointments to those seats, there are 6 agencies that have historically alternated between those 2 seats, serving as either primary, first alternate or second alternate. And it says the appointments would be made by a Federal Justice Agency Association when we first made this policy, but we're not sure if there is a federal public justice agency association. So we think that it would just be best to actually say who's been filling those seats and to have them U.S. Attorney's Office, TSA, and ICE, FBI, DEA, and U.S. Marshal. State public safety, we have referred to that was going to be appointed by the State Public Safety Agency Association. Again, not sure if such a thing exists. Or if it existed when the board policy. The seat has been filled by California Highway Patrol, both as primary and alternate. So we'd like to just to clarify that in the policy. For county public safety, that has historically been filled by the probation department. But again, it refers to appointments being made by San Diego County Criminal Justice Association. I reached out to the public safety group, and the preference for the county is to have the CAO from the county or their designee make that appointment on an annual basis. Department of Defense is self-explanatory, but there's different members of the defense, and it's been filled alternating between primary and alternate with the Navy and the U.S. Marine Corps. So we'd like to make that more explicit in the policy. Regional transit, sorry, Tim, you somehow didn't get in the policy, and we want to make sure it's in the policy. So again, MTS and NCTD have been alternating that seat since that change to Public Safety Committee membership has been added. So we wanted just to spell that out in case a third transit agency gets added, so there's not even more confusion. And then Homeland Security, again, a regional Homeland Security committee, but in history, we've had either the city or the county serving as the alternate or primary varying years. So again, just spelling that out. So just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention that we were going to be including these in the board policy changes and see if anybody has any concerns, discussion, or anything they'd like to share. Report.
Thank you so much, Dr. Burke. Any comments from the members of the public?
We have the original. Go ahead.
First, I want to say thanks, Blair. You're awesome. Anyway, yes, I think it is quite disturbing that you in your previous board policy have something listed in there that is going to be deciding who fills seats and you're not even sure that entity exists. That's a little weird. I mean, obviously you haven't been using it, but it's been in your board policy. So how many other things are in board policy that are like that you don't even know that they exist, but you have to go to them in order to fill certain vacancies. But there is no place to go. So you just fill them with whoever you want, right? That's how it works. That's how the corruption gets in, because you're like, well, we're going to tell them that it's this way, but that entity is fictitious. But it's cool because it makes us look like we're doing our job. Like, this is the kind of negligence that takes place. And so it would behoove you to make sure that none of your other board policies have that kind of crap in there.
And we have Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. This is the okay. I'm gonna wait a bit. I was about to speak on the wrong item, and I'll just simply wait. Sorry about that. Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. Are there any committee member comments or questions? Yes, Councilmember Campillo.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dr. Burke, for the presentation and trying to get this in order so that there's clarity around these things. I did have a quick question as I look at the 2 federal public safety advisory members. Seat A alternatives are U.S. Attorney, TSA, and then ICE. Is there a reason it was ICE specifically as opposed to just Department of Homeland Security? Because given the nature of what we work on at SANDAG, transportation issues like that, I'm not sure if ICE would be the appropriate one because of their interior enforcement, or if it would be Customs and Border Patrol, which we're going to be working on very closely at places like Otay East, Mesa East. So I don't know if we want to make that more broad so that it would be Department of Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security chooses the appropriate person rather than suggesting it be from the one enforcement sub-agency versus another. I don't know, just a suggestion.
I think that's a great idea.
That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Campillo. Any other committee member comments? All right, this is only a discussion item, so moving on to item number 7. See, Dr. Rodriguez from SANDAG's Criminal Justice Division will present on findings from the CJ Bulletin regarding crime in the San Diego region.
Thank you, Chair Rodriguez, Vice Chair Minto, members of the committee. We're going to present today results of our latest annual crime report. This crime report has been historically been released about this time of the year, summarizing the most important findings from the previous calendar year. So we're going to be presenting results from 2022. One thing that's important to mention is that this is going to be the last report that we use using the traditional UCR methodology. UCR was a system of crime reporting introduced by the FBI a few decades ago, and there we are transitioning to a new system, both nationally and locally, called either NIBRS or CYBRS. And starting moving forward, all of our reports are going to be using this new CYBRS methodology. A couple of things that we found interesting about this 2002 trends is the violent crime increased slightly. We had almost 13,000 violent crimes reported. That is about 3.9 per 1,000 residents, and that signifies a 2% increase from the previous year, and of course the highest in the last 10 years. That said, this rate still remains below the national average, as we can see in the slide. Unfortunately, and I have to mention this, the national rates that we present here are updated up until 2020, because again, at the federal level, they transitioned to the new reporting system, and so we didn't want to compare oranges to apples in this last report, so we are using the latest we have that we are using with the same methodology. Specifically talking about violent crime, we saw a decrease of 9% in homicides. While this is positive, it's still one victim is way too many, and so we have to recognize that even the almost 110 homicides in the region in the year 2002 are too many. A couple of things that we found from this report is that firearms are the primary weapon used in homicides, and that has been true for the last 5 years, followed by knife or other sharp object, about 20%. A couple of things about victims, we found that the main victim is Hispanic and or Latino at 40%. It's 40 years or older, that was 42%, and is predominantly male, 77%. When there's information about the relationship between the victim and the suspect, 3 in every 5 cases, that is 59%, there was a relationship between the suspect and the victim. Interestingly, when there is a known relationship between the victim and the suspect, firearms are less commonly used in more other means, such as use of force or blunt objects. Talking specifically about robberies had the highest increase in 2022 compared to other violent crimes. We had over 2,000 robberies, which is also an increase of 10% from the previous year. Interestingly enough, we found consecutive increases through the months of March and September, but the majority of them involve the use of what's called strong arm, that is a threat of force or intimidation, unless the use of firearms or other objects. In this case, firearms decreased to 15%, which is a 3% less than the previous year. Most of these robberies occurred in commercial establishments, almost half, or in the open, about 36%. That is in streets or public places. Other interesting or important violent crimes that we wanted to highlight is that about the 9,000 aggravated assaults was the largest number since 2004. Also that we saw an increase in violence against senior citizens, that is citizens 60 years old or older. We had about 1,200 violent crimes that include any type of crime, homicides, rapes, robberies, and aggravated assaults. All of those categories about senior citizens increased, but the one that saw the highest increase was homicide. Also, we experienced about 900 rapes in the region. That was 134 less than in 2021. 93% of them were categorized as completed rather than attempted. Yeah. Talking about property crime, the rate decreased 5% in 2022, but the value of the property stolen increased. We had about 51,000 property crimes reported. That is about 15.5 per thousand residents. This decrease is important, and it's still, again, below the national average, as we saw with violent crime. And from those property crimes, the majority were larcenies, 64%, followed by motor vehicles, 22%, and burglaries, 14%. Over $300 million were the value of the property stolen, and that is an increase of 24% compared to the previous year. But it's important to say that 27% of this property was recovered. That is almost $82 million in the previous year. Other crime trends that we saw in 2022. Hold on one second. We saw an increase in hate crimes of 9%, a decrease in domestic violence of 4%, and an increase in arson of 20%. Interestingly enough, for arsons, it was one of the highest increases that we saw this year on the specific crimes. There was the increase was 20%. But importantly to say is that 76%, of those arsons were caused to automobiles or non-structural property. And the hate crimes that we experienced last year, the majority of them were ethnic or racially motivated. That was more than half of those that we have recorded. We had around 86 events that were classified as hate crimes, with 108 victims and about 82 known suspects. And finally, the clearance rate for crimes, we can see that violent crimes are cleared more frequently than property crime, 46% compared to 9%. Motor vehicle theft clearance was the lowest among all the property crimes, but amounted for the majority of the value of property recorded. That was 91% of all the value recorded, recovered. I'm sorry. And so as a summary, we had about 64,000 violent crimes. That is 1941 per thousand residents. Violent crime went up. We saw decreases in homicides and rapes, but robberies went up. Property crime decreased 5%, and it was the second lowest in 43 years. And we saw increases in burglaries and motor vehicles, but decreases in larcenies. And again, something to be attentive of is an increase in hate crimes and violent crimes against senior citizens. And this concludes my presentation. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
Yes, we have two. The original. Go ahead.
Man, so you're saying one victim is too many? Very interesting. I'm one victim, and yet because it was a deputy sheriff, Gonzalez, badge number 0283, and while Tony Ray, who was the interim sheriff before Kelly came in, was sitting in the room while I was drug out for speaking at a public meeting. I was no threat to this officer. He's the one that had a bulletproof vest, a gun with bullets, handcuffs, a taser, mace, double my size. He could have brought me out into the hallway and stopped. And yet he continued for minutes on end to brutally assault me while the other officers who have a duty to de-escalate the situation were keeping my friends away so that they couldn't even do anything. They weren't even trying, they were videotaping it. But none of those officers did their job, and no one has since. And you say that one victim is too many? Yet when I am trying to go, and it's like, who do you go to when it's the police that do this to you? So you go thinking, well, the sheriff is our backstop to all the bad things going on, right? And they're going to want to protect you. Or are they going to be the one to assault you and get away with it because they have a costume on and they consider it legal? Whereas if I were to do the same exact thing, and I was told this by officers, I would be arrested. So instead of being treated like a victim, I'm being treated like a criminal just for going and having public discourse at meetings, which is our job as citizens, as people. We, the people, are supposed to hold you guys accountable. And in pursuit to doing that, we get brutally assaulted, arrested, all of these things. And what happens? Nothing. Nothing happens because the people that are doing these things are the people that you're supposed to go to and get help from, and you can't because they don't consider you a victim if it was one of their men doing it. Yet someone else, if I did it to one of you or that officer, I would be considered a criminal still and would be taken to jail and probably wouldn't see the light of day. Yet because you guys wear a costume, you think that you have some kind of authority over the people to do this kind of stuff. And we're supposed to be holding you accountable, but you make it impossible when you come after the people like that and make us the enemy. We shouldn't be arrested for going to these meetings. I shouldn't have been assaulted brutally by this man. I was paralyzed for 8 years from a spinal tap. I just started walking 5 years ago. And he set me back so far because I have multiple sclerosis. And it's quite ridiculous that you say one victim is too many. Yet the one victim speaking to you now, you smirk at, you silenced me, and you don't care. And you don't consider me a victim. It's sad.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Can I just make a quick response to this, clerk? I just want to mention, I would love to have you encourage you to follow procedures and file a complaint, and a investigation would pursue. I do have faith in the way our officers have in National City anyhow dealt with a lot of these situations. I want to make sure that we encourage the public to be open and transparent and come here or to any meeting and feel free to address their concern. But I would also want to encourage folks to actually go through a process and file a complaint and go through the proper sources of investigation. Thank you.
The next speaker is Blair Beekman.
All right, Blair Beekman here. Thanks a lot for the words of the chair. Hopefully the public comment time can be a good first place to get things out in the open, to air things out and make things understandable. And the public comment process can be a really great therapy process, actually, I feel. And so thanks for allowing the therapy. And from this place, hopefully next steps can take place as needed, and better understanding, I guess, for all of us. It makes a way for better understanding. Thank you. With that understanding ideas, very much of a thank you to Chairperson Campillo, who mentioned that having an ICE person on a future board may be ways that will be intimidating for people who, and they may not want to come to meetings in the future. Thank you in wanting to review that process and how a Customs and Border Protection person may be more appropriate. Good luck in having to balance those questions and how to decide. To conclude, it's my feeling that, boy, very much of a thank you that the statistics about domestic violence are down. That's really impressive. From San Jose, where I'm from, they just gave kind of the same report at their committee meeting yesterday. And the numbers were actually fairly similar. And so there's similar issues. They've had serious domestic violence issues that in the past 3 years that they're just beginning to address. And it's quite possibly San Diego has, I don't quite know how the process is for domestic violence statistics to go down, but that is really encouraging and positive, I think. I think it could be a good barometer for issues. And it sounds like you're talking about robbery and violent robbery issues and stolen vehicles is a big one too right now, and not so much violent crime, which is hopeful. And good luck how we can continue in those ways and patterns. That's a positiveness and a sustainability and how to talk about issues in our community process, to not lie to the public, but to be open and honest with them, creates trust. And it doesn't create apathy. When the public hears our officials talking in those negative terms, they tune out and turn off and become angry and violent. And when officials talk in more open, clear terms and are really trying to make progress and make sense, the public, I think, could respond really well. And we can have less crime, we can have less violence. So good luck in those efforts and how these things can do. And the work with accountability with tech that I do, it's an important part of how to work towards those good future goals. Thank you.
And that concludes public comment.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from the members of, committee members? Mayor Minto?
Yeah, a couple of things here. When we talked about arson and increases, it made me think, well, could we find out where those increases took place around the county? Because I know in my city, I have fire almost every single day in the riverbed. And I know your deputies are responding to them, so I know you know about that also, Sheriff. But then also made me wonder where those other increases are, if there's a certain area of the county where we see increases in, let's say, homicide or rapes or things of that nature. So that might be a good report to get at some point in time. And it was interesting, we talked about, I added up all the larcenies, and with the exception of robbery, and it looked like 31% of them were solved, which to me is a pretty high number, unless I saw that and 31 of them weren't solved. I don't remember exactly what that said, but a lot of people don't understand that the reason, so if it's 31% are solved, everybody's going to probably wonder what happened to the other 69%. And people have to understand that probably most larcenies, there's no suspect information unless you're somebody's, kind enough to leave some DNA or a fingerprint or something like that. Hard to identify them. That's why you don't know who stole a car, who broke into a house, or things of that nature even. And so I kind of thought that was important for people to know about. And then also going into domestic violence and the drop, could it be because during the COVID seclusion orders, their domestic violence rose? And now when people are getting back out, maybe now they're feeling relief. And so now there's not the same beef going on in the family that there was before. So that could be a reason why. So those might be some ways of, kind of letting the public know why we're seeing those reductions and things of that nature. I think it's interesting that we have a rise in homicides, for instance, because we did see a trend downward in that for a while. And part of that's because fire department and their paramedics do such a great job saving lives, and they're still doing that. So these homicides must have been so violent that they couldn't save lives. So that is an interesting process for me to go through in my brain about is it more violent, homicides, or is it, still your typical drive-by shooting or something like that? So that if we could find out maybe some other things, I don't know if it's something we need to really report out here, but I'd be very interested in some of that. So that's it.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other comments from committee members? Yeah, Dr. Rodriguez.
Chair, if you just allow me, the report actually has a lot more information, and at the end we have tables by jurisdiction showing the rates and the numbers by year and in comparison to other previous years. So we can provide that information more detail. I just didn't want to burden you with all those numbers. But yeah, I'm happy to bring that up to you in a later occasion.
Thank you. I do want to point out that although one crime is too many, generally want to commend the public, our public safety agencies, for keeping the region. I believe the report said second lowest increase in any metropolitan city around the country.
Just to clarify that, to using the numbers that we use, so comparing apples to apples, still below second to lowest from the cities that we can compare to that are similar in size and population.
Right. No, thank you for that. I think that's important to note. Oftentimes that gets kind of lost amongst all of the data, but we seem to be headed in a good direction in many different fields. So really want to commend everybody's work in it. Do we have any other comments from members of the committee? All right, if none, this is an informational item only. Moving on to item number 8, where Dr. Burke and Ms. Gordon from the County of San Diego Public Safety Group will present.
Good afternoon. I'm excited to share these results with you that we previously shared with the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, because it shows an example of the work the Criminal Justice Research Division does. About 80% of the work is evaluation studies that would be done, for example, by a university professor. And this was came about because the County Board of Supervisors put out an RFP, and it shows a good example. I asked Sarah to present with me of how we're collecting data and then making data-driven decisions based on that. So Sarah will be following my presentation to show how is the county going to be using this information. So the ATI project had 5 different components, and we were able to compile data for 4 of those 5. We were unable to get accurate information to do the cost analysis, but we did look at how jail populations changed, both during the period of the pandemic as well as in the period before it. Understanding who had continued contact with the justice system. A number of people and different types of charges were not booked into jail during the pandemic. And so we looked at seeing what had happened to those individuals so they continue to have contact with the law enforcement system. We looked at the service needs, gaps, and barriers to receiving needed services, did a literature review to look at proven programs and policies. And then throughout this project was working with the community. We had an advisory group of 14 individuals, as well as working with county stakeholders and offering ample opportunity throughout the course of the project for people to share their opinions, which were very diverse. So looking first at the jail population data, I'm going to be going through these components. This first slide on the left just shows you how much the jail bookings dropped. Pre-COVID, there were a monthly mean of over 6,600 on average per month, and that dropped to about 3,800 during the COVID period. Pre-COVID was defined as January 2018 to February of 2020, and during was March 2020 to December 2021. We did a number of interviews with stakeholders to try to compile all the different reasons that these jail numbers had decreased so much. There was a reduced opportunity, obviously, to commit or identify criminal activity when individuals were under stay-home orders or when mandated reporters could not see potential crimes that were occurring. There were court closures, early releases from jail, changes in bail structure, modified booking criteria, changes in probation supervision, as well as no transfer to state custody. We also looked at what were people booked for pre-COVID and during COVID. And you can see from this slide that the vast majority, both pre and during, were for alcohol or drug-related charges, low-level charges, most often disorderly conduct involving drugs or alcohol. You could see DUI was about 1 in 10 of all bookings. Under the influence was also common in both periods of time. The possession of a non-narcotic drug, that was an example of where there was no booking during the, or fewer opportunities to book during that period of time. So understanding who had contact with the justice system, and this was one, I think, of the most useful pieces of analysis that we did here. We started out with data from ARGIS, and we looked at individuals who had law enforcement contact for one of 9 low-level charges between April 1st, 2020, when the pandemic began, to March 31st, 2021. And what was unique about this was we got this list of individuals, and then we actually merged it with the data from the Sheriff's Department and the GYM's data to see who was not booked into jail. They would have been booked possibly previously, but they weren't during the pandemic. And we found that there were almost 12,000 individuals with over 19,000 law enforcement contacts. You could see over a third had contact for possession of narcotics, being meth, about 1 in 5 for possession of drug paraphernalia, about 1 in 5 for being under the influence, 13% for possession of a controlled substance, 7% for trespassing, 2% for illegal lodging, and then less than 1% for the disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace, possession of marijuana. So again, these almost 12,000 individuals had at least one contact with law enforcement, were not booked into jail. And so then we looked at their criminal history, law enforcement contact, which could have been an arrest or a citation in the 1 year prior to that contact that made them be in our sample, and then 1 year after. And you can see that 3/4 of the individuals had some type of contact in that 1 year before. So many individuals are going through the system. You could see of those 7,600 individuals with prior contact, they had almost 37,000 total contacts. The median, the average, was 3 contacts per person. So only about 25% had only 1 contact in that 1 year prior. Looking at the period after that, the 1 year after their initial contact, 55% had still additional contact. It wasn't like they just had 1 contact and did not have ongoing contact. Of those individuals, there was almost 23,000 total contacts, and the median per person was 2. And you can see here that 33% had 1, but the rest, 2/3, had multiple contacts with law enforcement. What we also did then was look and see what did they have contact for in that 1 year post period. So out of all those violations, and what I'd like to highlight here is that many of them were lower level offenses. We had about 1/4 were for the same types of charges that we sampled on, including the ones with the asterisk: possession of a narcotic, possession of drug paraphernalia, possession of a controlled substance. Others reflected financial and some type of instability or an inability to navigate the system. 8% fare violations. You could see mental health crises, failure to appear in court. So a lot of these lower level offenses. Only 1 in 10 of the individuals had any type of violent offense. So it appeared that most of these individuals did not have contact with the system for violent offenses. And for those who had 3 or more contacts, there did not appear to be any pattern of escalation of what they were having contact for. It was these repeated lower level offenses. Looking at the service and needs of these individuals, we collected data from about 8 or 9 different sources, but this came from a community survey we did of around 2,000 individuals as part of this project. And 1 in 5 of those said that they had ever been incarcerated or were currently incarcerated. And it really kind of displayed the types of needs that we found that people were reporting. You could see that many of them are basic needs: employment, housing, basic necessities, transportation. We also asked these individuals, did you receive any service for this need? And this is ordered in how important the need was. And you could see that less than around a third or less said that they had gotten any assistance for employment, housing, basic necessities, transportation. We also asked those same individuals, what are the barriers to getting services? And a takeaway from this is that it's not just enough to have a service provider providing the services. Is it easy to get to? Do people know that the service is out there? Are the waiting list too long? What about eligibility restrictions and also challenges in enrolling? We also did a special service provider survey and asked them, what are the service provider challenges? And they can really be put into 2 different categories: retaining and hiring staff. They talked about low salaries in many of the professions in these helping situations, and also the challenges of obtaining reliable funding, restrictions on how funding could be used, or, challenging contract requirements, for example, insurance needs. Finally, the last part that we looked at was looking at proven and promising programs. And this really leads into the recommendations that we came up with. We organized our work in the best practice literature review. There's a link to the full report in your agenda packet. Along something called the sequential intercept model. And what this is a conceptual tool that organizes different possible interventions at various points of justice system contact. And we really looked at academic literature, looked at what different types of federal agencies are doing. We wanted to look at both practice and policy. We found that many programs that are most successful address multiple needs at the same time. Really trying to look at advancing equity for vulnerable populations, but also improving public safety. And across all of this, it's so important to know that something works. Just knowing you have a program that's there is not enough. Is it implemented with fidelity? Do we know that it's really being implemented as intended? So we came up with 52 recommendations in our report, and Sarah again will be sharing how the county is using that information. But the guiding principles from our data, from the literature review, and from the community feedback we received was emphasizing prevention, early intervention, and rehabilitation. Again, considering how services are provided, not just if they're there. We don't want to have a service that's just a check in the box. How important cross-section and multidisciplinary collaboration is. Utilizing coordinated care and peer mentorship whenever possible, the importance of sharing data, ensuring basic needs are met, supporting families and victims, while also ensuring accountability to victims, and then also regionalizing successful local programs whenever possible. So I'm just going to kind of go through what these were. At Intercept 01 along the sequential intercept model, which is the community service and law enforcement recommendations, we had 10 different recommendations here. And broadly, they were focused on increasing community education regarding service availability. We heard that people didn't know what services are out there. Expanding alternative dispatch models as well as crisis response teams. Are there ways where individuals who aren't law enforcement can go out or respond to some of the calls that may go into law enforcement and do so safely? Consider additional booking alternatives that provide services. I know the sheriff may want to share some information there, and I'm sure it's part of your presentation too, Sarah, about looking at, are there ways for lower level offenses to get the services that they need in different types of settings, and then also building the capacity to expand sobering service centers around the region. At Intercept 23, which is the initial detention, court hearing, and jail prison recommendations, we proposed 11 recommendations here. We saw in the previous slide that there's a lot of people who are failing to appear in court. There's programs that have been nationally successful of trying to offer something as simple as text reminding people. I don't know about you, but when I have a hair appointment or some appointment, I need that text to remind me, a text to remind them that they're due in court, different things like that. How can we do things in a cost-effective way, but to help support people who may have challenges in the system? Increase pretrial advocacy and support and referrals and update of collaborative courts, determining why individuals are violating probation and explore options to address them proactively. expand eligibility criteria for programs such as county parole and alternative custody, work furlough and residential re-entry center programs. It's important to acknowledge here that with Prop 47, the hammer of treatment has gone away. So a lot of this is how do we get people engaged in services when they may not be mandated to do so. And something as simple as preventing late night releases from jail. We just found in our SAM study that I believe about a third of individuals, Octavio can correct me on the stat, said that when the last time they were released from jail, it was in the middle of the night. And they spent that night on the street. Intercept 4.5 is initial detention, court hearings, and jail prison recommendations. And here we proposed 14 different recommendations, and the 3 categories included increasing ability to meet individual needs through methods such as jail in reach and improve coordination from what's happening behind bars and then when people are released, ensuring healthcare needs are met, and supporting individuals being able to make a livable wage upon release. And then finally, we also offered a number of recommendations. There were 16 that really went across those different intercepts. And that included continuing building on collaborative efforts in data governance and infrastructure. I said it was such a big deal when we merged the ARGIS data and the GIMS data. A lot of the systems don't talk with each other. There may be different definitions. You were talking, homelessness. One system may define that differently. How do you match HHSA data with public safety data? Prioritizing objective program evaluation and commitment to constant improvement, ensuring services are culturally and responsive and accessible, and then increasing housing availability and providing additional services simultaneously. And so just to kind of sum up, what we really wanted to highlight here is that some of the takeaways, while low-level misdemeanors make up the relatively small percentage of the jail population, they are often booked and then released. So that is a costly system that could be improved upon. There could be alternatives to incarceration that could be implemented or expanded to better meet underlying needs that may otherwise go unmet and could contribute to ongoing justice system contact. So now I'll turn it over to Sarah to say, what is the county doing with this, Sarah?
Thank you, Cindy, and good afternoon, Chair Rodriguez and committee members. So I'm Sarah Gordon, and I'm the Interim Director of Diversion Prevention and Reentry for the County of San Diego. And as Cindy said, our Board of Supervisors directed us in fall of 2021, so it's been quite an ongoing project to contract with an independent consultant who was SANDAG and to come forward to the Board of Supervisors for recommendations for services and approaches that might permanently keep certain people out of jail and increase public safety and increase equity. The premise of the project was that they wanted an analysis, as Cindy has provided, of who was booked into jail, what had happened during COVID to reduce jail populations. Was there any way that we could provide additional services and system change in order to permanently keep some of those people out of jail? So it started as a kind of natural experiment, and SANDAG's analysis has been invaluable to answering this question for our Board of Supervisors and other stakeholders who've been involved in this work. So SANDAG actually released their research in a series of iterative reports. So this entire time, county, I see I'm running a PowerPoint too, right? What's the, right there. Okay, thank you. So as SANDAG was conducting their data analysis and their best practice research, their community outreach and their surveys, county justice and health partners, as well as regional stakeholders, were meeting to also look at our practices and to review SANDAG's iterative reports to answer the question for our Board of Supervisors. Why are people arrested and booked into jail in San Diego County? What unmet needs contribute to their behavior? And how can we improve our systems and supportive services based on data and evidence-based practices to safely reduce the number of people who are either booked into jail or who end up being rebooked into jail because of recidivism? The partners you see on this slide, some of whom are represented here today, and we really appreciated all the partnership, agreed sort of early in the project to focus particularly on alternatives to jail for those low-level charges that are frequently booked but don't generally pose a serious threat to public safety. And these county partners, as we reviewed SANDAG's work, we also met with SANDAG's Community Stakeholder Advisory Board and to develop kind of joint areas of priority. So when you think about what we were being asked to do, look at ways to keep people out of jail or to offer services so that people would be not rebooked into jail. This is kind of an ambitious ask of a board of supervisors because, as you well know, in the justice system and in the safety system, all our partners play a unique role, have a unique perspective, and also have individual authorities to make decisions about whether somebody's taken to jail or what kind of services they might get if they're on probation, et cetera, et cetera. So you can't just direct justice system changes as a board. However, we did find by including all of these collaborative stakeholders and the community and listening to the findings that SANDAG brought to us, that there were broad areas of consensus about alternatives to incarceration. And SANDAG's work really helped us to build that consensus, for example, by showing us that people who cycle through jail, who come into contact with law enforcement on low-level charges, tend to keep having those same kind of low-level charges, clearly have some intersection with drug use and addiction, homelessness. And SANDAG also showed us and brought forward the evidence that there's clear practices and programs that do reduce criminal recidivism and provide supportive services, and so support better individual outcomes and also public safety outcomes as well. So we were able to develop consensus with stakeholders about programs and services and approaches that would be appropriately implemented as alternatives to incarceration. So we got broad support from our board of supervisors, from the public, and from stakeholders. And so anything I'm talking about today as actions that the county plans to take are consensus actions. Of course, there was also broad variance in opinion on these important questions as well. SANDAG did present to our board on May 23rd of so we're in June, so just this month, just last month, SANDAG presented to the board, and county staff also presented a work plan that was adopted by our board last month. So that's what I'll be talking about. So SANDAG presented to our board of supervisors, and then the county staff had also been asked by the board of supervisors to respond to SANDAG's recommendations and to bring forward recommendations to the board of supervisors. So we brought forward to the board of supervisors 20 actions that were informed by this broad input and by SANDAG's analysis that really operationalize around half of SANDAG's recommendations, or at least are a first pass at operationalizing some of the recommendations. And these are actions that we can take generally this year. Some of them are longer term, that are led by various county departments, either by a public safety department or by a health department. And they include funded pilot programs to test some ways of keeping people out of jail or keep people from returning generally at earlier points than we've been doing services, expanding existing programs that have been shown to work, and also actions that don't require any funding. Generally, our work plan supports alternatives and interventions for those low-level misdemeanor charges involving drugs, alcohol, or public conduct. As Cindy shared, these charges and behaviors represent up to a third of all bookings into county jail and tens of thousands of law enforcement contacts each year. So if we can find ways to intervene with these people whose issues are clearly driven by addiction, homelessness, poverty, lack of employment, bad associates, et cetera, we can really provide cost-effective alternatives that are better outcomes for people and for the entire system. So I'll share some highlights of these actions that are included in the work plan. So we also followed this sequential intercept, trying to look at ways to intervene in the community pre-booking and when people touch jail and when people are reentering from custody. One of the things we'd like to do right away is to raise awareness of the central sobering services, now called the Recovery Bridge Center over on India Street. These services were enhanced as part of alternatives to incarceration. And today, this service has the capacity to accept from law enforcement almost anyone who's appropriate, so safe, nonviolent, non-oppositional, but anyone who's under the influence of alcohol or drugs 24/7. So it's a newly enhanced service. It's 24/7, but we think that regional law enforcement might not know yet that it's up and running. So that's one of the first actions we want to do is raise awareness and work with law enforcement to make sure they know about this service. We also want to, our county behavioral health services will continue to expand their crisis stabilization units, including one planned for East County, and to work with regional law enforcement and 911 dispatch to maximize the effectiveness and also to assess the proper capacity for non-law enforcement response teams. We also looked at SANDAG examples of various law enforcement diversion models, prosecution-led diversion models. We have some of these in operation in our county. So this year we want to continue our work with regional law enforcement and the city attorney and the district attorney to support any pathways that law enforcement or jurisdictions might and prosecution might be supporting for alternatives to booking or incarceration. So next in our work plan, we are going to work with the probation department, who part of their pre-trial work is working with partners to stand up these, what we're calling connection points. And this is the idea that a lot of people, most people are booked into jail for just a short period of time and then they walk out the door. So a connection point is modeled after an Orange County program where there's peers who understand people who have been in the justice system, formerly justice-involved people themselves, who can make that connection at the jail as people walk out and then offer them help with basic needs, transportation, something to eat, clothes, and bring them to a location located close to the jail. And if people are amenable, start that relationship and support them if they are amenable with assessments, connections to housing, and ongoing services. We also really looked at ways that we might start to address the high intersection of homelessness and people who touch jail. SANDAG had some data in the report, and we've looked at some other data like the point in time count. And depending on what source you look at, between like 25% and 30% of people who are in custody at any given time were literally on the street at the time of their arrest or a literal homeless situation. And then our justice partners have told us, and a lot more of these individuals are couch surfing or very unstable. So this housing need was identified as a really high need. So we're testing, and in partnership with the Sheriff's Department, the Sheriff's Department is going to add some correctional counselors in jail who are kind of focused on, the Sheriff's Department does great work with reentry and with populations, especially if they have a little more time in jail, they can form that relationship, assess needs. But because people are there for really a short time, and some people, as you know, are released with time served, they're unsentenced, and next thing you know, they're released. The Sheriff's Department will add counselors who are kind of focused on new populations through this effort, looking at trying to assess people's housing status, even if they're sentenced and drop out quickly, and connect them to services when they're released. So this is an example of something we'll be trying to pilot and see if we can make some headway on identifying homelessness more broadly in jail and make better service connections when people exit. Also, other reentry programs in our work plan, HHSA will work with the Sheriff, our Health and Human Services Agency will work with the Sheriff's Department to test a medical model program called the Transitions Clinic for people who have really high medical needs, make a connection while in jail, and connect people to community clinics when they're released. So at our board meeting, we received some specific direction. Our board 4-0 unanimously accepted SANDAG's recommendations, accepted our work plan. They also gave us some authority to contract for additional as case management services and housing services. As Cindy said, the best services are person-centered. They treat the individuals. So we found in our county that a model of care coordination and case management, identifying individual needs and then being able to meet them are a really good model. So we plan to pursue more of that. We also have authority to accept grant funding. Of course, all of this is very expensive and it isn't always clear what the funding source is for populations who are just coming into contact with jail or law enforcement. And it's not all, at any rate, funding, of course, is always a question. So we'll apply for grants and identify those. And then we were asked by our Board of Supervisors to return next year. Basically, public comment on our board looked at what we were doing and said, this is a first step. These are great actions for this year, but clearly SANDAG's body of work and data show that there's great areas of unmet need. And there are a certain population with high needs who are going to need a steady focus in our county if you really want to take some of, your most vulnerable, difficult populations and reduce their tendency to come into contact with law enforcement and cycle through jail. This is going to take an extended focus. So our Board of Supervisors asked us to return early next year with a kind of ongoing structure for alternatives to incarceration. Who leads this? Health, justice, our offices of equity and racial justice, our community stakeholders. How do we come together and keep this work going? And as Cindy noted, data and evaluation are going to be critical to everything we're doing. So we'll return to present how do we evaluate programs under alternatives to incarceration, and we'll provide an update at that board meeting. So this is really interdisciplinary work, multi-sector work. So when it comes to questions of working with law enforcement, working with prosecution, and working with jurisdictions, we promise that we will be in touch and we'll be involving any jurisdiction or agency that we propose to work with. And we look forward to working with the entire region on this project. And in the meantime, if you'd like to stay updated on the effort or learn more, I have maybe my last slide didn't make it. I can share my email address maybe through SANDAG, and we'll be establishing a website pretty quickly here in the next couple of months so you can stay up to date on the initiative and get involved if you like. We'll have public meetings and stakeholder meetings and more to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Burke and Ms. Gordon. That was very insightful information. Thank you. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
We have one in public, Dr. Timothy Bilash.
Hello, Safety Committee. Dr. Timothy Bilash. I'm an obstetrician gynecologist, independent scientist and researcher. Thank you for this opportunity. And thank the reports from Dr. Burke and Sarah Gordon representing the county and their new programs. I hope I can get through some of this, make it coherent. First, I wanted to, not going to talk much about economic incentive and alternatives in criminal behavior. I don't feel qualified at all to talk about law enforcement, but, and I thank the members of the community and agencies who are here today, because I appreciate what you do and no good deed goes unpunished. So keep up the work. The thing I want to mention is from a medical point of view of impulsivity. I'm aware that we have a lot of microbreweries in the area, and that there's a lot of substance use that crosses with that. And that's a very difficult thing to ask law enforcement to deal with, particularly from health incentives. So I really appreciate the county getting some money and putting some efforts into alternatives to incarceration. I wanted to mention awareness of a diversion court that was up in Sacramento some years ago that apparently was shut down because of funding. And they had a representative from I think it was a court representative, a caseworker or somebody with the someone from law enforcement was at every court meeting. And I believe that one of the issues is finding time to get away from your normal duties to be in court for those things. And because we now have some video access online, whether that's being used or could be used to make the different parties more available on a timely and efficient manner. But to get back from impulsivity, I just found out about a new drug for menopause So I looked into it, dug a little bit, and I found out deep down in the heart of it, it's binding something to GABA receptors. And GABA receptors are the impulse receptors, the reward receptors. And so I think in some ways we're also poly and over medicated. And it's very difficult for trained staff and physicians and hospital systems to get at that on an individual basis. And when you have instantaneous judgments, that's a real task, I think, for law enforcement. So I think some attention could be paid to the fact that we have particularly adolescent teenagers on huge numbers of medications. Adults are over medicated. These have huge side effects and interactions. And sometimes that creates impulsivity, which may look like non-compliance or other things, which makes the job harder. Thank you for your time.
We have the original.
Part of the problem is that we release, like SVPs that are repeat offenders and criminals out of the justice system. And then we're putting people in there who aren't criminals, like the homeless. We're criminalizing homelessness in the city of San Diego, and it's bleeding out into other places. And it's not even that they've committed a crime. It's just that they may refuse to take a shelter bed, but the problem is there aren't any shelters anyway. And the city set out to put all these pipe dreams out, like this is what they could provide, but they don't even have it right now. And so, that's the issue, is that we're criminalizing people for not doing anything wrong. And then the criminals roam free. And it's like the board implementing this is engaging in incarcerating people at meetings. The first time it was for someone clapping. And then it's been me 3 times since. And the first 2 times I was put in jail. And the third time I was brutally assaulted, and the man's still roaming free. And I did have it investigated. It was an internal affairs investigation with the sheriff, and they exonerated him, even though it was on tape. It doesn't matter. That man, and he gloats about it. He goes and he tries to intimidate me at meetings. It's very sad, because you guys say not one victim or whatever, and then you're criminalizing me. So just for going to a meeting, I'm being arrested for resisting arrest, which I never did, and also delaying a meeting, all for going and speaking at a meeting. So it's like everything is turned upside down. Then the man that sits there and assaults me gets to roam free and intimidate me and my friends and try and act like he's gloating because he, manhandled a woman and brutally assaulted her. And I have injuries that I still sustain that may never go away. And, even these other people that investigate, like when they were investigating it, they didn't talk to anybody that I was with. They said they were going to talk to 5 people. There was more than 5 people involved in it. Fox 5 News was there taping it outside. Nathan had his security guard come out. They all know what happened, and they did not do an investigation like they should have. And since then, I'm now being treated like a criminal because I am part of the press. And in attempting to get my press pass, first I was sent an email saying that I need to prove why I would need to cross police lines because the regulations have changed. Then I get one maybe 45 minutes later saying that the reasons why I have been I don't meet the criteria is because any documented behavior that would indicate a threat to the safety of an officer or a lab personnel at the scene, or a history of repeat arrests, or for felonies or misdemeanors. So I'm being targeted because I've gone to meetings and am redressing my grievances with the government that I have every right to do, and free speaking. Yet now I'm treated like a criminal because I was brutally assaulted by an officer who still roams free, even after investigation. So when you guys talk about public safety, that means nothing.
The next speaker we have is Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Thanks a lot for this item. A really, really good idea about how to address concepts of when people are in jail to provide housing services for them. And I thought that was so awesome. In being from San Jose and Santa Clara County, they're dealing a lot with issues of jail recidivism. And it's made them a bit uptight and conservative. to try to address such issues. And the ideas of finding housing for people from the jail system, I think, is a great Health and Human Services option to consider. And that they're balancing difficult questions and they're trying to study and do a good job. It is much the same as how we're needing to address or learning to address issues in San Diego about homelessness and what to do about the encampment issues. I think currently solutions have been presented finally at City Council that in their law enforcement based thinking, they may have gotten the law enforcement portion correct and down and worked out and studied, but it's a bit uptight and over the top. And they're going to have to loosen it up a bit. And I think it's Health and Human Services, just our good humanity that's going to help in that process. And I really hope in the following months, they don't continue a get tough approach. They don't have to take that tack. If they take an approach of Health and Human Services and Housing Department and a sense of humanity, that can create the regularity and needs of how to really address this issue. Because there's serious concerns I have about they want to force people into shelter, and if they don't, they're going to give tickets in a 1 to 3 day process, where there is a chance, there is a way to work the future of this new program to allow people a bit of time to collect their belongings, to find places to move, because it is a stressful thing to do that, and to allow people that time, a week's time, a month's time, that can be good. But the police department, city government is using the option to make it a mandatory 1 to 3 day removal. They have to go because shelters may be open for that amount of time. That's a wrong approach, and it's way too tight. And I just hope we work on that stuff, and this sort of item helps in that process. So thanks, attempts to offer humanity, what we're going through at this time. Thanks.
That concludes public comments.
Thank you. Are there any committee member comments or questions? No? Yes, Mr. K.
Yeah, just, anecdotally, the cops or the way things were in the 90s with the heavy enforcement and people were taken to jail. And with Prop 47, we're kind of caught behind a little bit. And the missing piece I view is all of the promises that were made in terms of the support services that were going to come along to fill the void once incarceration and mandatory rehabilitation was taken away. And it is interesting that the numbers that were presented do kind of follow what we've kind of always known as that there's a certain number of folks that seem to interact with law enforcement on a regular basis. And you talk to community members in certain parts of the county, and they are frustrated with what their perception is of the continual victimization in property crimes. And you see the unintended consequences in other cities in the state where major stores and other things are pulling out of certain communities because they cannot afford the continual victimization. So trying to wrap my head around this thing, I've tried to do my own research, and it appears that there has been some criticism about the way California is, and what we're talking about is basically the decriminalization of narcotics, how we've rolled that out in comparison to Oregon, which some people describe as even worse. But they do highlight the Netherlands and Portugal as a system as a process that actually worked. So I just thought I'd share that, but thank you for your work.
Thank you, Chief. Any additional comments or questions? I really want to commend the work of Ms. Gordon, of Dr. Burke, of SANDAG, as well as the county, of looking at a very nuanced approach to alternatives for incarceration. There's some things that are very seemingly kind of common sense, but other things that need to be changed structurally, at least in our city's perspective. So I really want to continue to work together to make sure that we have a better and safer neighborhood. Just as a kind of side note, National City, we're currently discussing our budget. And for the first time in over a decade, we've actually funded after-school programming for teenagers and hopefully to keep them out of trouble, active and engaged. And so we're going to do that. And then we've also are following the national standard for firefighter crews. So we're going to 4-person crews now where we used to have 3. And we are hiring for the first time in over a decade police officers. We've expanded the budget to add 2 more officers as well as 2 more dispatchers. So I think it is going to have to take a very nuanced approach to make sure that we have safer neighborhoods, including programming funding and also support for our public safety departments. So thank you so much. Any additional comments, questions? All right, well, with that said, this is a informational item. And the last item is just stating the next Public Safety Committee meeting, currently scheduled for Friday, July 21st at 1 p.m. We are adjourning at 2:45. Thank you.